In this video, we're going to look at the digestive system of animals. Animals are organisms that belong to the domain of Eukarya and the kingdom of Animalia. All animals are multicellular eukaryotic heterotrophic organisms. Animal bodies show a hierarchical level of organization. As true with all organisms, the body of animals is made up of cells. However, different cells come together to form tissues. These cells that form the tissues usually arise from the germ layers. Now, different tissues can come together to form organs, and different organs can work together as part of an organ system. Organ systems are usually assigned specific functions that will allow the organism to survive, reproduce, and grow better. There are many types of organ systems in animals. Some of them include the nervous system, which allows the animals to perceive their environment and respond to it appropriately. The musculoskeletal system, which is a combination of the muscular and the skeletal system that can allow many animals to move. The digestive system, which allows animals to obtain nutrients from food. The circulatory system, that allows animals to transport nutrients and gases to different parts of the body. The respiratory system plays a role in gas exchange and enables the intake of oxygen and the removal of carbon dioxide at the same time from the body. The excretory or urinary system plays important roles in expelling soluble wastes from the animal body. The endocrine system uses hormones to regulate different physiological functions of the animal body. The integumentary system involves the outer part of the body like skin, feathers, hair, so on and so forth. The reproductive system that plays an important role in the formation of gametes and also in reproduction. The immune system that plays an important role in defense of the animal. There are other types of organ systems not listed here, but this is a good number of organ systems present in animals. All animals are heterotrophs. Heterotrophs are able to obtain energy and organic molecules from others in order to gain nutrients. Thus, they are different from autotrophs, which are able to synthesize their own organic molecules. Heterotrophs are hence considered as consumers because they gain nutrition from other types of living organisms. There are different types of heterotrophs, which include herbivores that consume mainly plants or algae. Carnivores, on the other hand, eat other animals, while omnivores regularly consume animals as well as plants or algae. All animals consume food in order to obtain nutrition. Hence, the food must provide chemical energy in the form of molecules that can be used to synthesize energy storage molecules of the cell like ATP or FAD or NAD. Examples of such molecules include carbohydrates. Food must also provide building blocks to build the macromolecules present in the cells of the animal body. These include lipids, proteins, nucleic acids, carbohydrates, and other types of macromolecules. Food must also provide essential nutrients, which are nutrients that are required for life but that cannot be made from simple organic molecules. These include essential amino acids. Amino acids play important roles in making proteins in cells. There are 20 amino acids that are used to build proteins, and plants and microbes can make all 20 of them. However, most animals are unable to do so. There are certain amino acids which they cannot make and hence rely on their food to provide these missing amino acids. Similarly, animals cannot make certain types of fatty acids like the omega-6 or omega-3 unsaturated fatty acids. Hence, they rely on diet to obtain these crucial and important fatty acids. Animals also are unable to make all the different vitamins that are needed for their bodily functions. An example of this is vitamin B12. Since animals are unable to make vitamin B12, they rely on other animals or on microbes to make the vitamin B12 needed for their bodily functions. Animals not only have to acquire food, but have the ability to break it down, absorb nutrients, and expel the undigested material. This is accomplished by the digestive system. The steps involved in digestion include the ingestion of food, which is the intake of food. The digestion of food involves breaking the food down into smaller molecules. This can be done mechanically or it can be done using chemicals or chemically. Once the food is broken down into smaller molecules, the cells have to absorb these smaller molecules through absorption. Finally, not all food can be digested and absorbed. So whatever is undigested has to be thrown out through the process of elimination. Animals have evolved different feeding mechanisms to ingest food. The first one we're going to look at is filter feeding or suspension feeding. In this scenario, the animal is able to strain or filter small organisms or food particles from their surroundings. This is normally seen in aquatic or marine animals, where they will take in large amounts of water and then filter out food particles or small organisms from that water. Another type of feeding mechanism is substrate feeding. This is where the organism will live in or on their food source. A perfect example are the worms that are present in fruits. They tend to reside in those and are able to obtain nutrition from them as well. Fluid feeding is another type of feeding mechanism where the animal sucks nutrient-rich fluids from the host. So the blood that is sucked by the mosquito is an example of fluid feeding. Bulk feeding is when the organism is able to eat large pieces of food. Humans show the phenomenon of bulk feeding. The way there are different types of ingesting food or feeding mechanisms, there are also different types of digestion. Digestion is the breaking down of food and gaining nutrients. The earliest form of digestion in animals is intracellular digestion. In this case, the food is broken down inside the cells of the animal, and this type of digestion is seen in sponges. Sponges are the earliest animals that evolved and belong to the phylum of Porifera. They are filter feeders, and thus they are able to gain their nutrition by filtering their food from water. The water enters the internal part of the sponge through pores. There are specialized cells called porocytes that are able to generate these pores on the outer surface of the sponge. The water from the outside environment enters the inside of the sponge, and in the inside there are these layers of cells called as choanocytes. These choanocytes have flagella that are able to beat the water towards an opening called as the osculum that is present on the top of the sponge. The food particles from the water that comes inside the sponge stick to these different types of projections that are present on the choanocytes. The choanocytes then go ahead and phagocytose these food particles and digest them in their intracellular organelles called as lysosomes, which have enzymes that can degrade the food particles into smaller molecules. Once the food particles are degraded into smaller molecules, they can pass them on to specialized cells called as amoebocytes, or in some situations, they can directly pass on the food particles to the amoebocytes. The amoebocytes then degrade the food further if the need arises and are able to carry the nutrients to other parts of the sponge. The amoebocytes are also known to be totipotent, wherein they can form other types of cells that are present in the sponge. Thus, in this scenario, the food is taken up by the cells that are present in the sponge, which are the choanocytes, and thus intracellular digestion is what is happening in these animals. Another type of digestion is extracellular digestion. In this case, the food is broken down in a compartment that is present in the animal body. The digestive compartments that evolved in the earliest animals were those that had a single opening, which was called as a gastrovascular cavity. The organisms belonging to the phylum of Cnidaria, which include hydra and jellyfish, show the presence of this gastrovascular cavity, which has a single opening. And thus, this opening is used for the ingestion of food, but it is also used for the expulsion of any undigested material. Thus, it functions as the mouth as well as the anus of the organism. In the case of cnidarians, they have these projections called as tentacles that capture the prey and then push the food into the gastrovascular cavity. They're able to capture the prey with specialized cells that are present onto their tentacles called as cnidocytes. These cnidocytes can have specialized organelles called as nematocysts. These nematocysts can propel a thread-like structure that can inject venom into the prey when the prey is nearby. The prey thus gets stunned and is unable to move. The stunned prey is pushed by the tentacles of the organism into the sac through the mouth, and the sac is called as the gastrovascular cavity. Within the gastrovascular cavity, there are cells that will release enzymes, and these enzymes will act upon the food and break it into smaller particles within the gastrovascular cavity. The smaller food particles will then be taken up by the cells and digested further to generate energy. Any solid waste that is remaining behind will exit out from the mouth, which also functions as an anus, and this is the same opening from where the food entered. As organisms became more complex, a digestive tube with two openings evolved. This type of a digestive tube is called as an alimentary canal. In this case, there is a mouth from which the food enters, which is one opening, and there is a separate opening from where the undigested material will be expelled from the body. This is a key innovation because it helps in the ingestion of food to remain in the system while it is being digested, but also allows the animal to eat more food, and hence the tube acts as a storage area. This alimentary canal can be divided into different parts where there is a compartment for ingestion, another compartment for storage, another compartment where the food gets digested and absorbed, and finally a compartment where it gets expelled out. The digestive system in animals usually arises from the endoderm, which is the innermost germ layer. The different parts present in a digestive system include a mouth, whose primary role is to ingest the food. The esophagus is a tube-like structure that allows the food to move from the mouth into more inner parts of the alimentary canal. The digestive system of many animals has a crop, which is where this food is stored and moistened, getting ready for digestion. The stomach is another compartment where the food is digested. And in some organisms where teeth are not present or who have the inability to chew their food, there is a compartment called as a gizzard. The gizzard has a very hard keratin lining. It can also have pebbles, and thus it helps in grinding the food and digesting the food. Hence, gizzards are most commonly found in those animals that do not have the ability to chew their food. The intestine is a part of the digestive system that is able to absorb the nutrients, and the anus is the opening where the undigested material is expelled from the animal body. Let us now look at the digestive system found in vertebrates with an emphasis on the human digestive system. The food in all vertebrates is ingested by the mouth. Many vertebrates can have teeth in their mouth that allows for chewing the food and thereby breaking the food. Now, birds and some reptiles lack teeth, and hence their food is broken down in a compartment in the digestive system called as the gizzard. Many animals have a tongue within their mouth that allows the food to be mixed with a fluid that is secreted from the salivary glands called as saliva. The bolus, which is the food mixed up with saliva, is then swallowed and moves to this tube-like structure called as the esophagus, which connects the mouth to the stomach. The movement of food occurs through these rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the esophagus muscles, which is called as peristalsis. The stomach is a muscular sac of the digestive system that can expand as food accumulates in it. It is able to mix the food through contractions and produces a fluid called as gastric juice. This gastric juice is quite acidic and hence has a low pH. It also has proteases, and the most important one is pepsin. These proteases are able to break down proteins that are present in food into smaller structures. This mixture of partially digested food along with the gastric juice is called as chyme. The chyme from the stomach enters the small intestine where it undergoes further digestion and absorption. The chyme enters the duodenum of the small intestine, and there it mixes with digestive juices that can come from different sources. The pancreas provides pancreatic juice into the duodenum, and in this case, the pancreatic juice has different types of components that aid in the digestion of food. These include proteases like trypsin, amylases that can degrade carbohydrates, and lipases that can digest fat. Thus, we're able to see different types of macromolecules being digested by components present in the pancreatic juice. Another type of digestive juice that mixes with the chyme in the small intestine is bile. Bile is made by the liver, and from the liver, it goes to the gallbladder where it gets concentrated. From the gallbladder, it then enters into the duodenum of the small intestine. Bile plays very important roles in the emulsification of fat. For fat to get degraded, lipases act upon them. But because fat is hydrophobic, the lipases may have trouble getting access to the fat. Through the bile salts, the fat gets emulsified, which allows the lipases better access to the lipids that are present in the fat. It allows the lipids to get digested into smaller units. In addition to the pancreatic juice and the bile, the intestinal cells also secrete digestive enzymes that aid in the breaking down of different macromolecules that are present in food. Thus, the digestive system employs many different strategies to digest macromolecules that are present in food. In fact, the process of digestion in the case of humans begins in the mouth itself, where carbohydrates get digested by enzymes present in the saliva. In the stomach, proteins predominantly get digested through the actions of pepsin. While in the case of small intestine, we are able to see the digestion of different types of macromolecules, including carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, as well as lipids or fat. Many of these are digested through enzymes that are made in the pancreas and sent to the small intestine in the pancreatic juice, as well as in bile. The small intestine itself can also make enzymes that aid in the digestion of carbohydrates, proteins, and nucleic acids. Once these macromolecules, like proteins, are broken down into oligopeptides or amino acids, they can be taken up by the epithelial cells or the enterocytes that are present in the intestinal wall. This is the process of absorption. The way we see this happening for the amino acids, similarly, carbohydrates are broken down into oligosaccharides or monosaccharides and are taken up by the intestinal cells. Fats, on the other hand, are broken down into free fatty acids or monoglycerides after they get emulsified with the bile salts and acted upon by lipases. This way, we are able to see the absorption of the broken down macromolecules present in food. The wall of the small intestine is folded, which allows for more surface area to be present for the absorption of nutrients from food. When we look at the intestinal wall, there are finger-like projections called as villi. Each villus has epithelial cells or enterocytes that have microvilli or cytoplasmic finger-like projections that are present. The absorption of nutrients occurs through these microvilli that are present on the enterocytes. The nutrients that are taken up by the epithelial cells or the enterocytes are transported to either the blood or the lymph. From the blood, the nutrients are transported to the liver. The undigested food moves from the small intestine to the large intestine. It should be noted that by the time the food comes to the large intestine, most of the digestion is already complete in the small intestine. And hence, whatever food is now present in the large intestine is material that the small intestine could not break down. Within the large intestine, water, electrolytes, and vitamins are absorbed by the cells present on the intestinal wall of the large intestine. The undigested food that is present is further broken down by bacteria that are present in the large intestine, which constitutes the microbiome of the animal. In the large intestine, there is a huge load of bacteria that are present. There are more than 1 trillion bacteria that are present per ml of material within the large intestine. These microorganisms help in the breakdown of food, but also produce vitamins, amino acids, and fatty acids that are needed for the normal functioning of the animal. The microbiome also protects the animal by competing with pathogens, and hence they play a crucial role in our well-being. Any food that wasn't digested in the large intestine is stored in the rectum as feces. The feces is the solid waste of the body. When the time is right, the feces exits the body through the anus through the process of defecation. To summarize the whole process of digestion in vertebrates like humans, it begins with the food being ingested in the oral cavity, where it is mechanically broken through the process of chewing. Within the oral cavity, the process of digestion begins with carbohydrates being broken down by the saliva. The bolus that is thus formed is transported to the stomach through a tube-like structure called as the esophagus, which moves the bolus through peristalsis. The food enters the stomach as the stomach expands, mixes the food through contractions, and begins the digestion of different food molecules, especially proteins. The partially digested food then enters the duodenum of the small intestine, where it is further digested through the action of different enzymes. The nutrient molecules that are then broken down are absorbed by the intestinal epithelial cells or enterocytes. The chyme then gets transported to the large intestine, where any undigested material is acted upon by the bacteria present in the large intestine and is fermented. It should be noted that there are other types of microorganisms also, but bacteria are the most numerous. The remaining nutrients that are present or have been broken down are absorbed in the large intestine, and the undigested material is stored in the rectum and finally expelled out of the body through the anus. The nutrients that have been absorbed by the different intestinal cells are transported to the blood, and this blood then moves to the liver. Once it reaches the liver, there are different things that can happen. The liver can store glucose as glycogen, but it also filters the blood to remove any toxins, pesticides, or carcinogens by detoxifying these compounds. Ultimately, the blood from the liver will go to the heart through veins. Once the blood reaches the heart, from there on, the heart can pump the blood to different parts of the body. Usually, it will be first sent to the lungs, where it gets oxygenated and comes back to the heart, and then the heart pumps it to other parts of the body. This is part of the circulatory system. The urge to eat in animals is controlled by hormones, and thus our appetite is also controlled by hormones. Hormones are able to regulate both long-term and short-term appetite. Some hormones that play crucial roles in appetite include ghrelin, which is secreted by the stomach wall and triggers the feeling of hunger before meals. Insulin, that is made by the pancreas, on the other hand, is able to suppress appetite, especially after eating. Leptin is another type of hormone that is produced by adipose or fat tissue, which plays a role in suppressing appetite. Thus, we are able to see that the process of digestion and appetite can all be controlled through different types of hormones. With this, we come to the end of our talk, where we learned about the nutritional requirement of animals and different feeding mechanisms employed by animals. We also learned about the evolution of the digestive system and different parts of the digestive system. We learned about different aspects of ingestion, digestion, absorption, and expulsion, and finally learned about the transportation of the absorbed nutrients. We then learned about the role of hormones in appetite.